It is springtime in Vermont, and one of the few brave flowers to have emerged, in fact, other than snowdrops, I think it's the only one, is the crocus. I wanted to paint a crocus, therefore, but also I wanted to try and keep this as simple as possible. I think simplicity is one of those ironically difficult things to find. I started with new Gamboge, added some permanent orange, and I'm going to add a drop or 3 of permanent Carmine. And I'm working on Arches paper, 140 pounds, cold press, natural white. I want to do a background rather than leave it white, as tends to be my preference, but I thought it might be interesting to do a background. And so I'm wetting the paper first, both for interest and for practicality, because once the paper's wet, I'm less likely to get dry marks from not being fast enough or not working with enough water. And then I'm going to go in with this lovely color that I'm just only barely started using, and it is called Transparent Yellow Oxide. And I'm also gonna add some of the cooler raw umber, which is kind of crunchy here. Not sure what's going on. And I'm going to be kind of loose in this background. Maybe I'm going to let these chunks here do their thing. I'm just cutting around the shape of the flower. The reason why I'm going with this background is, well, because I like these colors. I like the brighter among the earth colors, but also I'm also going to add a little bit of orange, because a yellowish, and then this is just water for texture. A yellow-based background is going to make the flower, it's going to be purple, pop more, and I like that. If you're familiar with my work, you know I like colors. I like bright colors, and I like complementary colors because they take out the best of each other. So now I have a choice, right? I could let this dry and then be precise, or I'm going to start painting the flower, and I think I'm going to do the latter, and I'm going to mix it on the paper. So I've started with that permanent Carmine, and I'm adding Cobalt blue. And I like to mix colors on the paper because there's a certain variety that you achieve that way that otherwise you can't. And the reason why I put in first one color and then the other is pure laziness, so I don't have to wash and dry the brush in between. There's a little bit of mixing with the background, and I don't mind. I started by doing the stamen in the center because I did want that to stay kind of separate. And it is. It dried pretty fast. So, something else I'm going to do before letting this dry is do a little bit of spatter on the background. Mostly with the same colors, but I'm also going to spatter a little bit of permanent carmine and a little bit of the cobalt. And just add some water so it mixes a little bit. And it's kind of gray, but that's okay. I don't want the entire painting to be colorful, but just parts of it. And I'm going to let this dry now. I'm going to finish up, I hope, because the idea here was simplicity. So this is permanent orange with a little permanent carmine. And then for this second layer, I'm actually going to mix a little bit of the carmine and the cobalt blue on my palette, and rather than on the paper. But I'm really fond of how here it blends with the background, so I'm just adding water there. I'm not messing with that. I'm leaving it. Here a little bit less fond of it, so I'm gonna add some purple, which is being grayed a little bit, as you can see, but that's okay. Maybe for variety, some straight cobalt. Here I'm gonna do it, yeah. There's that natural separation that already happened, so I'm not going to mess with that. I'm going to leave that edge as it is. Then here it's kind of a mixture, and I kind of like it. So I'm going to start by adding the purple there, and then just water here. I guess a little bit of color is inevitable. And a little bit of extra blue here. Blue and orange are complementary, so since I have a lot of orange in this center part, I think adding some blue, it's a nice touch. Again, I like this here, so I'm gonna try and leave it. How the color blends with the background. Those are decisions that you kind of make as you go along. I struggle with edges, you know. It's hard to know what's a good balance of lost edges, that is, the edges that melt with the background or with something else, and better defined edges. It's really hard. And I know when I see something I like, but I don't necessarily always know how to obtain the effect that I'm going for. And with watercolor, from what I understand, that's always a little bit the case, meaning you can't always control. I imagine the better you get at it, the better you can control, but a lot of it is just whatever the water and the paint and the air want to do at that specific moment. And maybe that's why one never tires of it. This is a time where I could move on. The only thing I don't like this. And even in the photograph, I don't like it so much. And I don't want to criticize Mother Nature, far be it from me, but maybe less vivid is the answer. Yeah, I like it better now. And I might just give it more a sense of dimension like this with some Carmine and maybe a little bit more orange here. I'm going to let this dry and then reassess whether there's something else I want to do. I kind of like it now, but when watercolor dries, it changes, and let's see if I like the changes or not. I like how this flower came out. I just want to add a little bit of texture to some of the petals or parts of the petal. So for example here, I like the sense of seeing previous washes, but again I don't want to mess up with some of the edges I like so much. I'm using that mixture of Cobalt and permanent Carmine, except I used a little bit of Ultramarine blue to get it somewhat darker. And all I'm doing is applying some of it, then I clean the brush, dry it a little bit, and blend. And even as I paint this, I haven't yet decided whether to do something else with the background. Kind of in denial about having to make that decision. I like it the way it is. It's kind of boring, but I think it works, and I think for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to let this be.